Kale trudged across the endless desert, his boots sinking into the hot, shifting sand with every step. The sun blazed mercilessly overhead, and the horizon shimmered in waves of heat. On this planet, the dunes seemed to stretch forever, a golden sea broken only by occasional rock formations. Kale's mission was simple, at least on paper: explore, search for lost alien relics, and report any findings to the colony. But he knew that in deserts like this, danger often came in ways he could not predict. His pack was heavy, filled with basic supplies, a few tools, and his scanner, a small device designed to detect any unusual energy signals. Kale wiped sweat from his brow and squinted into the distance. Something caught his eye, a strange shape that seemed to rise unnaturally from the sand. At first he thought it was a large rock, perhaps shaped by centuries of wind and erosion. But as he walked closer, the shape moved. Kale froze. His heart beat faster and he instinctively reached for the plasma tool at his side, but he did not raise it yet. The movement was deliberate. Slowly, he realized what he was seeing was not a rock at all. Something alive, enormous, lay half buried in the sand. The figure was taller than any human he had ever seen, her form massive and powerful, even while still mostly covered. Kyle's mind raced. Could it be a creature, or some long-forgotten alien survivor? Either way, he knew he had to be careful. "Hello?" Kale called, his voice cautious. The desert swallowed the sound almost immediately, but he hoped it would carry far enough. The shape twitched. Then, very slowly, a hand emerged from the sand, tipped with scales that glimmered under the sunlight. Kale's breath caught. This was no ordinary being. He had studied alien species before, but nothing he had ever read described anything like this. The giantess opened her eyes, huge, golden, with slitted pupils like a predator's. Her gaze locked on Kale, and she hissed. The sound was sharp, warning, and filled with a strange intelligence. "Don't come closer. Your scent means death." Kale froze in shock. His mouth went dry. Did she just talk? He whispered to himself. But it was more than talking. It was a warning, a very clear one. The words echoed in his mind more than in the desert air. For a long moment he just stared at her. Her body was partly buried in sand, as if she had been stuck here for a long time. Her scales were beautiful, shimmering in shades of blue and green that shifted in the sunlight. Yet the glow did not hide her pain. She was wounded, or trapped, or both. Kale knew he had two choices: retreat and leave her to whatever fate had brought her here, or risk everything by approaching. Curiosity, as always, won over caution. Kale took a slow step forward. The giantess tensed immediately, raising one enormous arm as if to strike. "Stop!" she hissed again. Her voice, though loud, carried a trembling note, as if she were afraid of something even greater than him. Kale froze. He lowered his hands and gestured slowly, trying to show he meant no harm. He spoke gently. "I don't want to hurt you. I'm just curious. Are you okay?" The giantess studied him. Her eyes narrowed. For a moment, Kale felt as though she could see every thought in his mind. Then she slowly shifted, sitting up a little, her massive body disturbing the sand with every movement. "Curiosity is dangerous," she said softly. "You humans, your scent, it carries death for me. Stay back." Kyle nodded. He did not step closer. Instead, he squatted a safe distance away, keeping his scanner active. He noticed strange energy readings around her. Whatever she was not ordinary. She radiated an alien energy that he had only ever read about in old texts about lost civilizations. The desert wind picked up, carrying fine sand that stung Kale's face. He felt a strange connection forming despite the warning. He realized she was not attacking him. She was warning him, perhaps protecting herself. Slowly, he spoke again. "I can help you. If you let me." The giantess tilted her head, considering. Then she hissed again, sharper this time. "No one helps me. All who approach die. I cannot trust you." Her voice was like music and danger at once, a strange combination that made Kale shiver. He sighed. "I don't expect trust," he said, "but maybe we can work together. I'm strong, I can survive here, and I can help you." Her eyes studied him for long moments. Kyle noticed scars along her arms and shoulders, marks from some long battle or accident. She was massive, yes, but clearly weakened. That knowledge gave him hope. Maybe she could survive if she accepted help, even if only a little. As Kale crouched there, observing, he noticed the sand shifting farther away, strange shapes moving beneath the surface. Something large was stirring under the dunes. Kyle felt a chill. The desert had secrets, and this giantess might be one of the largest. But there were more, things that could move faster, hit harder, and strike without warning. He glanced at her. "There's more here," he said. She flinched, and Kale realized she could sense it too. "We should be careful," he added. For the first time, she spoke words without hissing. "I am Thalira," she said, "last of my kind. My enemies buried me here. They wanted me gone forever." Her voice was low, sorrowful, and filled with centuries of memory. "You humans, your presence is dangerous to me. You carry a scent my body cannot survive." Kale felt the weight of her words. He had heard tales of alien guardians, creatures tasked with protecting technology or places far older than humanity. But standing here, watching her struggle to remain upright in the sand, he realized the stories had not prepared him for the reality. This was no myth. This was life, enormous and terrifying, and somehow fragile. The desert sun climbed higher, the air shimmering with heat, and Kale made a choice. He would stay. Carefully, he pulled some of the heavier tools from his pack, nothing sharp, nothing threatening, and began constructing a small ramp from sand and rocks. Not enough to touch her, not enough to intrude, but enough to offer a way to shift her weight if she wanted to move. Thalira watched, her eyes narrowing. "Why do you help?" she asked. Kyle shrugged. "Because I can. Because humans, we survive. And sometimes we try to help. That's who we are." She studied him for a long time. Finally, she relaxed slightly, though she did not move from her half-buried state. "Perhaps," she said slowly, "there is hope in your kind. But you must keep your distance. One wrong step, and it will be the end." Kyle nodded. He understood. The desert was dangerous, and she was dangerous too. But together somehow, maybe they could survive. Hours passed. Kyle observed the dunes, keeping watch for anything else that might emerge. Thalira remained still, occasionally hissing warnings at him, occasionally letting him approach slightly. The sun began to fall, casting long shadows over the golden sand. The desert's silence was broken only by the occasional wind gust, or the subtle shifting of something beneath the dunes. Kale knew this was only the beginning. He had found something extraordinary, something that could change everything humans thought they knew about alien life. But with discovery came risk, more than he could yet imagine. And as he finally settled into the sand to rest, he felt it in the back of his mind. The desert was alive, watching and waiting. Somewhere beneath the dunes, something massive stirred. And tomorrow, Kale realized, the real test of courage would begin. For now, though, he watched Thalira, half-buried, hissing warnings, and somehow he felt a strange sense of connection. Despite the danger, despite the warnings, and despite the unknown threats around them, Kale knew one thing for certain. Humans were not weak. Humans adapted, survived, and sometimes humans could even earn the trust of a giantess, and that was only the beginning. Kale woke to the quiet hum of the desert morning. The sun was just rising, painting the sand in warm shades of gold and orange. He stretched, careful not to move too abruptly, remembering Thalira's warning from the day before. She had remained half-buried through the night, her enormous body blending with the dunes. Her eyes, golden and alert, followed every movement he made. Kale understood now that trust would take time. She was wary, and rightly so. Humans carried a scent that was dangerous to her, yet he could sense her curiosity as well. She watched him with intelligence, even respect. though she would never admit it aloud. "I will try again today," Kyle muttered softly to himself. He began unpacking some of his supplies, arranging them neatly in the sand so that he could work without making sudden movements. Today he would attempt to communicate more clearly. He had studied alien languages before, but nothing matched the complexity of Thalira's species. He would have to improvise. He held up a small hollow tablet and projected images of himself, gestures, and symbols. Slowly, deliberately, he moved his hands to show he wanted no harm. Thalira's gaze followed him, her head tilting slightly. She hissed a warning tone but did not move away. Kale took this as a small victory. "Please," he said softly. "I want to understand you. I want to help." She studied him for a long moment. Then, almost imperceptibly, she shifted her massive hand to point at the hollow images. Kale's heart raced. It was a sign. She was willing to try. Over the next several hours, Kale worked to bridge the gap between their two worlds. He drew shapes in the sand, mimicked simple gestures, and used his tablet to record movements and sounds. Slowly, patterns emerged. Thalira responded to certain symbols, her golden eyes brightening when he showed understanding, narrowing when he made mistakes. Through these sessions, Kale learned her story. Thalira was the last of her kind, guardians of an ancient technology that could manipulate energy in ways humans had only dreamed of. She had been buried by enemies who feared her abilities and wanted her species erased. She spoke of great cities, towering structures, and a civilization now gone. Her people had lived in harmony with the planet, controlling the environment and protecting life. Kyle listened, fascinated. Every word, every gesture was a window into a world humans could hardly imagine. Yet he remembered the warning. His scent was dangerous to her. He kept his distance, careful not to come too close, even as he felt a growing respect and admiration for her. "You are strong," Kyle said quietly. "But alone, it is dangerous here." "I can help you," she hissed softly but did not deny him. Instead, she allowed him to show her small tools he had made. Simple inventions designed to help her shift in the sand or examine the dunes without strain. She studied them carefully, testing their usefulness with her massive hands. Kale realized that even a small act of ingenuity applied wisely could earn her trust. As the day passed, the desert seemed to grow restless. Shifts in the sand suggested movement below the surface. Kale watched carefully, knowing that these disturbances were dangerous, but also that Thalira's presence had likely kept worse threats dormant. She explained in gestures that other creatures, long asleep beneath the desert, were awakening. They were territorial and could attack anything that approached. Kale's mind worked quickly. He began drawing simple maps in the sand, marking potential danger zones and safe paths. Thalira followed his movements with her eyes, and when she understood, she nodded slightly. They were beginning to coordinate, a human and a giantess working together in a harsh alien environment. By midday, the heat had grown intense. Kale handed her water in a reinforced container, careful to keep it at a safe distance. She drank cautiously, her massive throat moving as she took the liquid. For a moment, they shared a silent understanding. Survival required cooperation, even across worlds. Then a low rumble echoed beneath them. Kale froze. He looked at Thalira, whose eyes narrowed. "It is them," she hissed. "The guardian of my past." "They wake, humans. You must be careful." Kyle's heart raced. From the sand, massive shapes began to rise. The guardians were enormous mechanical constructs left behind by her enemies to ensure no survivor remained. Their metallic bodies gleamed under the desert sun, and their glowing eyes fixed on him with unrelenting focus. Kale thought quickly. He grabbed his tools and began setting traps in the sand, simple human-designed mechanisms that could divert or slow the guardians. He moved with precision, combining his knowledge of terrain and basic engineering. Despite the danger, he felt alive, his mind sharper than it had ever been. Humans thrived under pressure, and he was about to prove it. Thalira watched closely, her trust in him growing with every correct move. She began to use her strength to shift parts of the sand, guiding him, signaling safe areas, and pointing out weaknesses in the approaching guardians. It was a delicate dance. His intellect complemented her power. Together, they had a chance. Hours passed in tense coordination. The guardians advanced slowly, methodically, but Kale's traps and Thalira's guidance kept them at bay. They were a team, united by necessity and a growing respect for each other's abilities. Kale realized that humans, when clever and courageous, could match even the mightiest of alien challenges. As evening approached, the desert's colors shifted again, turning from gold to deep red. Kale and Thalira paused to rest, their breathing heavy but controlled. The Guardians were temporarily halted, diverted by a combination of human ingenuity and alien power. Kale looked at Thalira, noticing scars and marks along her massive body. "You have survived so much," he said quietly. "I can't imagine what it must have been like, losing your world, your people." Thalira lowered her eyes, and Kale sensed her sorrow. She had lived for centuries guarding secrets and fighting enemies, only to be left buried and alone. Yet here was a human, fragile by comparison, who had not fled. He had stayed. He had adapted. And he had shown her that humans were not merely hunters or scavengers. They were thinkers, problem solvers, and allies. Night fell. The desert cooled, the stars appearing like diamonds above. Kale set a small protective perimeter around their temporary camp. He could feel the Guardians still lurking far beneath the sand, and he knew that tomorrow would bring more challenges. But for the first time, he felt that survival was possible. Not just for him, but for Thalira as well. They shared a quiet moment, separated by necessity but connected by understanding. Thalira's voice was low and almost reverent. "Perhaps your kind is not entirely dangerous," she admitted. "Perhaps there is hope." Kyle smiled faintly. "Humans adapt," he said. "We survive. And sometimes we help. That's what makes us strong." She studied him for a long time. Then she shifted slightly, a subtle acknowledgement of trust. It was small, but it was meaningful. Kale knew that trust like this could not be rushed. It had to be earned. And in this harsh desert, under the shadow of ancient guardians and long-buried enemies, he had begun to earn it. As he lay back to rest, Kale thought about the days ahead. Communication would grow, cooperation would strengthen, and together, human and Giantess could face the dangers of the desert. But he also knew this was only the beginning. Ancient powers slept beneath the sand, enemies waited in shadows, and survival would demand every ounce of intelligence, courage, and resilience that humans could offer. Yet Kale felt a quiet confidence. Humans were strong, adaptable, and curious. They faced impossible odds and survived. And if he could show that even a human could gain the trust of a Giantess, perhaps anything was possible. The desert was vast, mysterious, and dangerous. But Kale and Thalira had begun something extraordinary, a partnership across species, a bridge between worlds, and the first steps toward understanding, cooperation, and survival. Tomorrow the desert would test them again. But Kale was ready. He was human after all, and humans had never backed down from a challenge, no matter how impossible it seemed. And for Thalira, perhaps, the arrival of this human was the first sign that hope, even for a last survivor, was not entirely lost. The desert night was silent, but Kale could feel the tension in the air. He lay beside a small dune, eyes open, listening to the soft hiss of wind brushing the sand. Thalira remained partially buried, her golden eyes reflecting the faint starlight. She had not slept, her massive body tense, muscles ready to respond to any danger. Kale understood why. Tonight the desert was restless. The guardians she had warned him about were moving beneath the sand, far larger and more dangerous than he had imagined. He rose quietly and looked at Thalira. "We need a plan," he said softly. "I can't let you fight alone, and I can't survive out here by myself if they attack. We have to work together." Thalira hissed in response, but not angrily. It was a sound of caution, of thought. Slowly, she lifted one massive arm and pointed toward a nearby ridge. Beneath it, the sand was shifting strangely, as if something massive moved just below the surface. Kale nodded. He could feel it too, a deep rhythmic tremor that warned of hidden danger. Carefully, Kale began drawing in the sand. He made diagrams of the terrain, showing Thalira where to move to avoid hidden threats and where he could act to slow or divert the guardians. Thalira watched, studying his lines and symbols, then made subtle gestures to confirm she understood. For the first time, Kale felt that they were truly communicating. It was slow, awkward, but real. Hours passed, and the tremors grew stronger. The desert seemed to awaken around them, responding to Thalira's presence. Kale had studied alien technology and life forms, but nothing had prepared him for this. Beneath the sand, massive shapes began to rise, glowing faintly in the starlight. The Guardians were enormous, humanoid in shape but clearly mechanical, their joints clicking and hissing with energy. They had been dormant for centuries, and now they were awake, sensing movement and life above them. Kale quickly grabbed his tools and began working. He placed small traps, simple mechanisms that could trigger the Guardians' movements and throw them off balance. He dug shallow pits, covered them with loose sand, and positioned reflective surfaces to confuse any energy sensors. Each move was carefully calculated, requiring precision and patience. Thalira helped where she could. She shifted her weight to move sand away from Kale, guided him to safer positions, and occasionally used her massive strength to hold back small collapses. Together they formed an unusual team, human ingenuity paired with alien power. Kale marveled at how effective their cooperation could be. The Guardians rose fully from the sand, their glowing eyes locking onto Kale and Thalira. Their massive limbs moved slowly at first, testing the ground, but it was clear they could strike with devastating speed. Kale's traps activated, and a few Guardians stumbled, falling partially into pits. Sparks flew as metal scraped against metal. Thalira roared, a deep, powerful sound that shook the sand around her, and used her massive arms to push away one Guardian that had come too close. Kale felt a surge of pride and fear. Humans were small, fragile, and unarmed against these giants. Yet his intelligence and quick thinking were keeping them alive. Every calculation mattered. Every choice could mean survival or death. As the battle continued, Kale noticed patterns in the Guardians' movements. They were programmed to protect specific areas of the desert, moving in loops and responding to energy signals. He used this knowledge to redirect them, leading them into traps or toward areas where Thalira could strike without risk. Each success strengthened their trust in each other. Despite the danger, Kale took a moment to admire Thalira. Her scales shimmered in the moonlight, her eyes bright with determination. She was enormous, powerful, and deadly. Yet she had chosen to work with him. It was a rare honor, he realized, to earn the trust of a creature like her. Humans were often underestimated, but Kale knew that courage, intelligence, and persistence could make a difference, even against impossible odds. The night stretched on. The Guardians adapted to their traps, forcing Kale to think faster and act quicker. He dug new pits, adjusted reflective surfaces, and used small energy pulses to confuse their sensors. Thalira continued to fight alongside him, pushing away any Guardian that got too close, her strength and presence a constant shield. At one point, a Guardian surged toward Kale, moving faster than he had expected. He rolled to the side, narrowly avoiding a crushing blow. Thalira reacted instantly, grabbing the Guardian with her massive arms and hurling it into the sand. Sparks flew, and the metallic giant crashed heavily, sending tremors through the desert. Kale's heart pounded, but he kept moving, placing traps and adjusting their defenses. Hours passed in a tense rhythm of strategy, movement, and survival. The Guardians, relentless but predictable, tested their coordination. Kale realized that humans' greatest strength was their ability to think quickly, adapt, and use creativity to overcome raw power. Thalira, despite her enormous size and strength, relied on him just as much as he relied on her. It was a partnership built on respect and necessity. Finally, as the first rays of dawn crept over the dunes, the last Guardian fell into a trap, immobilized and unable to move. Kale and Thalira stood side by side, exhausted but victorious. The desert was quiet again, the sand settling over the fallen Guardians. Thalira looked at Kyle, her golden eyes reflecting a mixture of relief and curiosity. "You are clever," she said softly. "You're kind. Maybe dangerous, but you are not weak." Kale smiled, wiping sweat from his brow. "We survive," he said simply. "We adapt, and sometimes we help. That's what makes us strong." Thalira studied him for a long moment. Then she spoke again, her voice almost gentle. "Perhaps there is hope. Perhaps humans can be allies." It was the first time she had spoken words of trust, and Kale felt the weight of it. The battle had been fierce, but it had also brought them closer. They had learned to rely on each other, to communicate without words, and to respect the strengths each brought to the fight. Kale realized that humans' ingenuity, courage, and adaptability were what allowed them to survive, and even thrive, against seemingly impossible odds. As the sun rose higher, the desert's heat returned, but Kale felt a sense of accomplishment. They had survived the night, faced immense danger, and proven that cooperation between species, even vastly different ones, could work. He glanced at Thalira, whose massive form towered over him yet seemed less threatening now. She was a guardian, yes, but she had also become a teacher, showing him the depth of intelligence and strength beyond human comprehension. Kale knew the challenges were far from over. More guardians might awaken, and the desert still held secrets buried beneath its shifting sands. But for now they had a fragile peace, a moment to recover and an understanding that together they could face what came next. He looked at Thalira and nodded. "We'll keep going," he said. "We'll survive. Together." Thalira's eyes softened slightly. "Together," she agreed. It was not just a word, it was a promise. A recognition that despite differences in size, species, and power, they could rely on each other. As they prepared to move, Kale felt a surge of determination. Humans were small, yes, but their minds were powerful. Their courage could face the impossible. And if one human could earn the trust of a giantess, perhaps humanity's future in the galaxy was brighter than anyone had imagined. The desert stretched endlessly before them, dangerous and mysterious, but Kale no longer felt alone. With Thalira at his side, he understood that even the harshest worlds could be navigated with intelligence, courage, and cooperation. And for the first time, he truly believed that humans, despite their fragility, could face any challenge and survive, no matter how vast, alien, or dangerous. Together, they would uncover the secrets of the desert, survive the Guardian's wrath, and perhaps, in time, discover the ancient legacy Thalira had been protecting for centuries. Kale knew it would not be easy. The desert would test them, the enemies would return, and the challenges would grow. But he also knew that humans had never backed down, and now he had proof, ingenuity, courage, and the willingness to trust and cooperate could triumph even in the face of overwhelming power. And with that thought, Kale set his gaze on the rising sun. The day was just beginning, and so was their journey, together. The desert sun beat down relentlessly, but Kale felt more prepared than ever. The events of the previous nights had taught him much, about survival, about strategy, and about the unusual bond he shared with Thalira. The Guardians might awaken again, and unknown dangers could emerge from beneath the sand, but Kale had learned to think quickly, to adapt, and to trust in his own ingenuity. Thalira stirred beside him, half buried as always, her golden eyes scanning the horizon. She had grown stronger with each passing hour, encouraged by Kale's careful planning and problem-solving. The two had become a team, human intelligence guiding alien power, a partnership that combined brains and strength in ways neither could achieve alone. "This day will be different," Kale said quietly, examining the dunes. "We know them now. We know their patterns. We can face them together." Thalira's eyes narrowed thoughtfully. She hissed softly and nodded. It was her way of agreeing, of acknowledging his plan without needing words. Kale smiled faintly. Words were unnecessary. They had found understanding in gestures, actions, and mutual respect. The ground trembled beneath them. The Guardians had sensed life again, moving swiftly beneath the sand. But this time Kale was ready. He had studied their movements, learned their weaknesses, and set up a network of traps and obstacles designed to turn their own power against them. As the first Guardian erupted from the sand, Kale held his breath. It was massive, even larger than the ones from the previous night, its metallic limbs glinting in the sunlight. It moved with surprising speed, its glowing eyes fixed on him. "Now," Kale whispered to Thalira. With a roar, Thalira leapt, her massive arms creating deep trenches in the sand that diverted the Guardian's path. Kale activated his traps, sending minor energy pulses that confused its sensors and caused it to stumble. The Guardian crashed into a series of pits Kyle had dug, immobilizing its limbs. Sparks flew and the desert shook as metal ground against sand. Kale moved quickly, adjusting the traps and positioning reflective surfaces to blind the Guardian's sensors. Thalira roared again, pushing one mechanical giant back with her immense strength while another tripped over a hidden pit. The coordination between them was seamless, a perfect balance of human strategy and alien might. Despite the chaos, Kyle felt a thrill of pride. Humans were small and fragile, yes, but their intelligence, creativity, and courage were formidable. In these moments, he realized the truth of the HFY adage. Human adaptability and ingenuity could overcome even overwhelming odds. The Guardians regrouped, moving with precision toward their targets. Kale and Thalira knew this was their final chance. If they failed, they would be buried beneath sand and metal. But Kale had one more plan, a risky move that relied on both his mind and Thalira's immense strength. "Follow my lead," he said. He activated a series of energy pulses that mimicked the signals of buried technology, drawing the Guardians toward a central location. Thalira prepared herself, muscles coiled like springs ready to strike. As the Guardians converged, Kyle signaled her. With a single powerful motion, Thalira struck the ground, sending a shockwave through the sand. The impact destabilized the Guardians, causing several to collapse into the pits and trenches Kale had prepared. Sparks flew and metal groaned under the strain. Kale's quick thinking kept the remaining Guardians off balance, leading them directly into the traps. Hours passed in a tense blur of movement, strategy, and survival. Kale's mind raced, calculating, adjusting, and anticipating. Thalira's strength was unmatched, and her trust in him grew with every successful maneuver. Together, they turned the tide of the battle. Finally, the last Guardian fell, its sensors disabled and its movements halted. The desert was silent again, the wind sweeping over the sand as if nothing had happened. Kyle and Thalira stood side by side, exhausted but victorious. Kyle exhaled deeply. "We did it," he said. "We survived." Thalira's eyes softened as she looked at him. "Your kind is clever," she admitted. "Humans can be more than I feared. You think, you adapt, you survive." Kyle smiled faintly. "We always do," he said. "Even when the odds are impossible." Thalira lowered her gaze, her massive form relaxing. "Perhaps there is hope, perhaps. My people's legacy is not lost, and perhaps humans can carry it forward." Kale felt a surge of pride and determination. Humans were small, yes, but they were capable of greatness. Creativity, courage, and persistence could overcome even the most formidable opponents. And he had proven it, not just to himself, but to a being far older and stronger than any human. The desert sun climbed higher, warming the sand and drying the sweat on Kale's skin. He knew there were still dangers ahead. The desert was vast and full of secrets. Ancient machines, lost technologies, and unknown predators could emerge at any moment. But for the first time, Kale felt confident that they could face it all. He looked at Thalira, who remained half-buried but alert. "We've done well," he said. "But there's more to discover. Your legacy, your knowledge, it can help more than just us." Thalira studied him, her eyes thoughtful. "Perhaps in time," she said. "For now we survived together." Kale nodded. Survival was only the first step. Understanding, cooperation, and trust were the next. And in these harsh conditions, they had already proven that humans could rise to the challenge no matter how alien or dangerous the world. As they moved through the dunes, Kale thought about the future. He would return to the colony with stories of the desert, of the Giantess, and of the challenges they had overcome. But more importantly, he would bring back knowledge of the power of cooperation, of human ingenuity, and of the courage that allowed a small human to stand alongside a being as powerful as Thalira. For Thalira, the day had been a revelation. She had seen humans at their best, adaptable, clever, and brave. They were capable of more than she had imagined. And for the first time in centuries, she allowed herself to believe that the Guardian's destruction was not the end of her people's influence. Humans, she realized, could be allies, protectors, and partners in preserving what was left. The desert stretched endlessly before them, dangerous yet beautiful, a world of challenge and opportunity. Kale and Thalira moved together, a human and a giantess bound by trust, respect, and shared experience. They were unlikely allies, but their combined strengths had turned impossible odds into survival. Kale felt a sense of accomplishment and purpose. Humans were small, yes, but their minds were powerful. Their courage, resourcefulness, and willingness to adapt could achieve what brute strength alone could not. And standing beside Thalira, he realized that the future was full of possibilities. Together they would continue to explore, survive, and uncover the secrets buried beneath the desert. They would face whatever challenges came next, guardians, predators, or long-lost technologies, and overcome them. Because humans had never backed down from danger, and Kale now knew that even in the most alien and hostile environments, they could thrive. As the sun reached its peak, casting long shadows over the dunes, Kale glanced at Thalira. She looked down at him, her golden eyes calm but alert. "We have survived," she said softly. "But the journey is not over. There is much to learn, much to protect, and much to preserve." Kale nodded. "And we'll do it," he said. "Together." For the first time in a long time, the desert felt less like a place of danger and more like a place of opportunity. The Guardians had been defeated, the threats contained, for now. And Kale knew that with intelligence, courage, and cooperation, humans could face any challenge and survive, even in the most hostile alien worlds. Thalira gave a faint nod, the closest she would come to a smile. "Then we begin," she said. And with that, Kyle and Thalira set off across the dunes, moving as a team. The desert stretched before them, full of mystery, danger, and discovery. But Kale knew that together, human ingenuity and alien strength could overcome any obstacle. The journey ahead would be long, filled with challenges and surprises. But one truth had become clear. Humans could thrive anywhere, adapt to anything, and face any odds with courage and determination. And if a human could survive and earn the trust of a giantess, perhaps the galaxy held endless possibilities for the species that had once been considered fragile. Kale looked to the horizon, determination in his eyes. The desert was vast, the dangers were real, but humans had a gift no other species could match: the ability to think, adapt, and rise above impossible odds. And beside him, Thalira, the last of her kind, moved with a newfound trust and respect for the small human who had proven that courage, intelligence, and determination could change the fate of worlds. And so, their adventure continued, a human and a giantess, facing the unknown together, ready to discover what lay beyond the endless dunes of the desert world.